It says we are live. Okay, so let's begin. We're here to talk about Ammon Hillman, who I had not even heard of a couple of months ago, but since then I just keep hearing about the guy. I know very little about him, so I'm actually going to be as curious to hear what Ali has to say today as anyone. I haven't done very much research. I didn't really want to do much research because I found Hillman and what he was talking about so repellent and so implausible that I wouldn't have considered him worth my time. And I actually said that to Ali when she first reached out, that I wasn't sure it was going to be fruitful to look at this. But since then, I've discovered that some of my readers actually do take the guy seriously, so that means I have to due diligence and all that. I won't introduce Ali except to say that she's a former Hillman follower, if that's the right word for it, participant in his thing, and she is no longer. And she's going to tell us basically about her involvement and her impressions. So let's start there. Let's start with you. Like how long ago you came across Hillman and what drew you to him? Let's just start with the simple stuff.
Okay, I will start actually saying why I was interested, because I've been researching the reason why there's quite a lot of rebuttals in the New Testament against quite libertine behavior. My own research led me to think this is actually rebuttals against something that is proto-Gnostic or Gnostic. Since then discovered that a lot of the New Testament's been written later and it is actually against the full-blown Gnostics. But part of that was realizing that there's likely to be entheogen use. And I was at that point looking at a lot of the heresiologists' accounts and realizing, yes, there's quite a bit of entheogen that's likely here. Saw Ammon Hillman on Gnostic Informant YouTube channel. I thought, oh, he seems to know what he's talking about. He recommended his book, The Chemical Muse. Now, this is about the only publication he's done which was prepared for peer review. So there are some references, and he is talking here about the recreational use and also the purpose, the medicinal use of a lot of the ancient drugs back in the classical times. And it was very interesting. I read that. I thought, okay, I will reach out. I emailed him in September 22 and unfolded a bit of my research, tagging in the Synagogue of Satan as a code for these libertine Gnostics. We Zoomed. He invited me to the Myth and Law Discord, which is at the time where he was located for discussion of his materials. I joined in. Didn't take long until I thought there's not much real discussion going on here. I was finding anomalies with what he was saying, with what I know the Bible was saying, and anomalies with how he's interpreting quite a lot of stuff. So I would gently ask questions and push back a little bit, and finding there wasn't really a willingness to discuss. And I was thinking, this sounds like an echo chamber. Very soon, he actually started his online shows in January 23 is when he started his shows. And there were discussion groups afterwards. Now, being in the UK, the shows started at 2 a.m., so I couldn't join in. But a lot of the more covert activity was happening in those after meeting shows and other things, other discussions I wasn't involved in, but I have friends that were, so I've got some information. He started Greek courses. I was invited to be part of the first cohort of intensive Greek study. He really is an excellent teacher, very encouraging, very forgiving, very patient. We were progressing well. At the same time, in the Discord were discussions, and I was again butting up against what I could see were quite manipulated interpretations. And I made some comment. He actually then wrote back to me on the Discord chat, sort of mocking me as if I'm wrong, but I wasn't. So I then wrote back and showed him the Bible verses that had that. He didn't take kindly to it. I'd also spelled out on that chat some points where I felt he was not being accurate and he was not being faithful to what was there. And we're getting some people agreeing with me that, yes, this should be discussed. I was obviously becoming too much of a threat. The next Greek lesson, I gently raised the question that was the controversy between us, and he didn't appreciate that. He shut down the tabs on the myth and law that he was involved with, and had me, long story, basically the next time that I saw him, he came charging in, yelling that somebody here says he can't teach Koine Greek, you know who you are, get out. I was absolutely in shock. Having been evicted, I did hear the recording later, and he apologized for the purge. Now that is a very significant term that I will come back to. So having been purged, he then said, well, he gloated, I have no boss, I can do whatever I like, which is a huge red flag. And it's true, he has nobody correcting him, he has no peer.
Well, let's pause there, Ali, because we're getting into the whole saga now, and for those who don't even know who this guy is, it's
Okay.
going to be hard to understand, or harder to understand. So let's switch now to Hillman himself, who he is, what he's offering, why people take him seriously, a little bit of his background and history, the Lady Babylon thing that you've mentioned. Maybe if you could sum that up, and then we can come back to the narrative.
Okay. The Lady Babylon project, to some extent, was outgrown from his own experience. He has hinted that he's had clergy sexual abuse in the past. And he seems to have a passion to expose the fact that has been happening all through the history of the church, which it has, and he's found lots of evidence of it. And his turning point away from Christianity, he had been a Christian at one point, and he had received some so-called prophecy saying that he would be have to bring in the AntiChrist, and he would initiate the apocalypse, and Satan was giving him a troop of demons to assist him and protect him, which at the time he laughed about, but that actually has become his mission. So he is saying that the child sex abuse in the church is the continuation of the same mystery religion that Jesus himself was practicing. And it's proven because he was caught with this naked, now I'll say young man, who was not naked at the time, he was robed in a cloth. But Jesus Ammon calls him the naked kid. And he is melding into his interpretation a lot of knowledge he has had from his reading, his vast reading in classical literature, where he has understood both the medical side from Galen, that he's translating Galen's works, untranslated, and he's tasked with translating Galen's medical works, and also the mystery cult operations that you see in all the Orphic hymnology and Homer's tales and all of that side. And these he is seeing and putting them back into the biblical texts where they don't belong, but he is making them fit. And therefore, Jesus is practicing this drug right mystery that came originally, he says, from Queen Medean back in the Bronze Age. And she would use her own body as a factory to produce an antidote to the snake venom. And the entrance was from below, and that's called the kolpos. And it was apparently very effective, and the essence of that is what he's using. And he was saying that Jesus, with the young boy, I will get on to what he was actually doing there, but that Jesus was practicing the mystery with this young boy, and he was interrupted. And it's a death and resurrection mystery, which was practiced in the Eleusinian mysteries, but his version is, of course, more superior. I will talk about this more on a second reel I want to show. But his project is to expose Jesus as this pederastic monster and bring down the church, because they've believed in this fairy tale Jesus, which he's going to show is an absolute monster. So that is his mission. And how he's produced the translations which supposedly prove this, I can show you have no foundation. So is that enough answered on that side at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think you used a euphemism from below, but I don't really want euphemisms here. You're talking about anal, vaginal in the case of what? Can you be specific?
I can be more specific. Fine. I didn't know about your audience.
No, I can take it.
Okay then. Right. I will say his mantra. His mantra is, Jesus Christ was arrested in a public park with a naked kid with his penis and testicles wrapped in a medicated bandage. And just I'm putting two things together here. But the mantra is, he was arrested at 4 a.m. in the morning, screaming, "I'm not a trafficker." That he supposedly got from Mark 14. The chapter in Mark 14. The trafficker bit is from verse 48, but 51 and 52 is where he throws in his scenario that there he was, caught red-handed with this abused, trafficked kid that he's analing and taking an exudate from, and it's really very ludicrous. But the way he has sewn it together so cleverly, he has people believing him. Now, I won't talk about it all here, but my published website does have a page where I call it Critique of Mark 14, 51 and 52. I've had to do it as the web page because my original clips that I made, he has somehow disabled, whether it's just because he's blocked me, but all the clips that I've ever taken from his own videos now don't play. So I've had to redo them as a screen recording. And they were playing, and they were in the Ammon Hillman subreddit. I posted it there, got quite a lot of response, and I think from there it became obvious he needed to silence me a lot more. So all my clips became unusable.
So did you more or less complete the story of your own expulsion, or is it unfinished?
The expulsion, yes, but since then I've been commenting in his video comments, and quite often have people responding. Sometimes in this response I can pick up basically slander that he's been propagating against me, because they're repeating it back to me. I thought, oh, I know where that came from. Because I'm a serious threat. I will just post the facts that dispute what he says. And I will put a string of facts after he's done a video to say, look, this is not the facts. You're just, I won't say you're making this up or you're lying, but there's a lot of inconsistency. And too many times I think I was being successful. So I find that most of my comments, I think he's now removed. They're not on the threads anymore. And even while I was trying to do it, I could see it, but I think there's a facility where you can reserve a comment for moderator approval. So although the person who put it there can see it and the moderators can see it, nobody else can. So a lot of my comments have become invisible anyway.
All right. Well, do we need to get into more backstory about Hillman, do you think?
All right, backstory about Hillman. He did a classics special projects school when he was 17 and 18. He just loved classics for some reason, went and did that. But he said most of his classmates then went on to, they were the cream of the cream, and they went on to the CIA and the military. He even talks about friends he has in MIT. I don't know what MIT is, but he says he has friends in MIT.
It's a very famous university. I think it's Massachusetts Information Technology. I might have got that completely wrong, but it's a very high-profile tech university.
Okay, fine. He's also done a bachelor's in bacteriology. He did his degree in classics, and then he did a postgraduate degree in classics again, but this was the thesis about the drug use in classical times. He was told he couldn't publish it unless he excised the recreational drug use. This was back in the 90s, and at the time it just wasn't even considered that great classical people like Plato and Socrates would be having recreational drugs, so that had to go. He then had other jobs, but he went on to St. Mary's University, a Catholic university, and it seems like it was an all-girls one. And he was the classics teacher there, very well loved. He put on the play Seneca, which Seneca's Medea, Seneca's the author, Seneca's Medea. And one of the props for that is what the Greeks called the fascina, which is a penis-shaped rod, which the actors would come in and shake at the audience, cursing them for their greed, cursing them for their sins. And apparently that was too offensive, so somebody removed them and told him, right, you've got to do something else. So he found something else. But in the actual performance, even these fake fascinas, he said they look more like bananas in the end, he was watching people's reactions, and he realized this is a purgation going on. And what he was looking for were the people who weren't offended about the sexuality, who weren't all proper, prim and laced and, oh, this is shocking. Those he would reject. He was looking for the people who could embrace the classical, who could embrace the old laxness of attitude to sexuality. So that was what he meant by purgation. I was obviously apparently too straight-laced and too resistant, and I was never going to go along with him, so I had to be rejected. But during this time at St. Mary's, he had also been for quite a long time looking at alternative paths in the classical mode, and came across what he believed is the muse. Now for him, it was a living dead girl, he calls her, a sort of what he feels is a voice that guides him. And he gives an illustration of needing something and saying, oh, I'll grab that book, open it up, and it's exactly what I need. And the muse gave that to him. So he relies on the muse showing him things while he's reading the texts, and he sees a connection, and wow, that must be the muse. So a lot of what his teaching he gives, he says the muse has showed him. And I can show you some things where the muse has been very, very wrong. We'll get to those later. But the essence of how he's doing things, sorry, I got sidetracked. He was at St. Mary's University. The muse apparently showed him how to be an incubus, and he tried it one night. And the next morning, it was reported by a witness in the dormitory that she saw him floating in through the door and hovering over this other girl who was terrified, pinned rigid to the bed, unable to speak or move. And then he went. And he'd said to the muse that I want to know how to dream rape. And this dream raping has come up several times, actually, as he's talked in various places, but also in the back room after show talks with the more devoted people who were there at the time. There was only a small group of us to begin with. And it was the time when there was the revival going on in the campus universities. Tennessee, I think, was one that had a big revival meeting going on. And of course, being the satanic congregation, they had to do whatever they do against it. And one night, he said to his crew, I'm going to give you a picture of Pastor Doug Wilson and his wife. I want you to get high on your entheogen, whatever you want to use, and concentrate your powers for me to then go and dream rape him and his wife. And some of them were quite uncomfortable about it. Ammon could see from the conversation that a guy who's my friend was reluctant. He then shot him over an email, basically telling them, right, you do it or you're out. Jerk off if you must. That's roughly what the email said. My friend didn't do it. And apparently the next day it was announced that the revival had been shut down because of a measles outbreak. So of course he takes the credit for that. But whether or not anything happened incubus-wise, I don't know. But actually involving his people in it. And several actually, when my friend asked them, said, well, no, we didn't do it. But I don't know who did. But he does involve his people in some occult things.
All right. Well, I can see there's kind of no end. There's bottomless pit of Hillman's
it goes on.
deviancy. So I think, if you're ready, why don't we give audience members a taste of his medicine, and show one of the clips.
Right. Now, okay, I will share my screen in a moment, but I will explain what this is. It's an episode where he reveals his trump card against Jesus. He wants Jesus to be guilty, but not of the crime that most people think that he's being accused of. The crime that Ammon wants to convict Jesus on is that he was profiteering from the mystery. That is his only crime in Ammon's books, that he was trafficking, that he was making money. It didn't matter what he was doing in the mystery. It was the trafficking that was wrong. And I'll show you in the second clip, the second reel that I want to show you, him saying this. So he needs to have Jesus guilty. And the way he gets it is through the word that Jesus says when they come to arrest him. This is in Mark 14:48. And he says, you're coming against me as if I'm a leistes. Now, leistes, variously translated by the New Testament, and I think some of the new ones have got it right, because Josephus used the word leistes to describe the rebels against Rome. And in Luke 23, it talks about the Pharisees going to Pilate and saying he was telling the people not to pay their taxes, he's making himself a king. And Pilate comes back later saying, you brought me this man who was inciting the people to rebellion. All right, so that was the charge that went over his head, King of the Jews. All right, so in this context, lestes means the trafficker, sorry, the rebel. And extra proof on that, when John in his gospel describes Barabbas, he calls him the lestes. And when Mark describes Barabbas, he calls him a I can never say the word, but it's a co-conspirator. So that is the alternative name. That's the alternative understanding of lestes, a co-conspirator, basically the rebel. So on both fronts, lestes in this context is talking about them coming at him as if he was about to lead a rebellion, a rebel leader, an outlaw. All right, so that is the proper understanding of the word. But Ammon has his wonderful magic to play, which I shall now reveal to you. I will share screen. All right, share screen. Where's it gone? Present. Sorry, I'm a bit rusty on this.
That's all right. I'll just let people know as well that this is speeded up slightly, so Ammon is not quite as manic as it seems.
Well, it's saying, yeah, it's on 1.5 times speed, but he actually speaks very slowly, so 1.5 is still very intelligible. Right, I will start entire screen. Window, I'll do a window. Nope, entire screen, I think. Share. Oh, why is it not sharing? Chris, help me. Why is it not sharing?
I'm wondering, because it worked last time, but it actually created its own participants.
Okay,
Okay, you got it, good. Add stage. There we go.
Oh gosh, what's happening here?
It's gazing at your best.
Oh, help. What?
Stop sharing there.
Stop sharing.
Okay, so where were we?
Lestes.
You were in your own browser.
I'll get techie here.
Where's the presentation bit? Present.
Down there, present. Sorry, I am very rusty on this. Sorry to keep you
Share
watching them. Lestes there.
And you want lestes, that one?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Press play.
Okay.
What his skill
Go.
can tell you. It's because the ancient Greek says it's that way. And let me tell you something. He is lying through his teeth. Let's just look at what the Greek says. Yeah. Okay, hit us another clip, please.
Right, I'll stop there. I've done this in groups so that I can make a little comment on each. You heard that, lying through his teeth. And it is deflection because he's about to lie through his own teeth very, very shortly.
If you can boost the volume,
Go backward,
a little
really
bit.
means to wobble, to stumble. They lost their bearing. And when the Bible says they fell, it's the Greek word pipto, which means to fall hard.
Right.
Jesus makes a note of this. He says something out of his own mouth. Out of his own mouth. Tonight we have firsthand evidence. Right? We've been trying to establish a motive here for Jesus. And there are those of you who have been saying, it's not, things are not so bad. Right? We have to understand here that we can get rid of the religiosity, but we can't get rid of that core. Let's look at the core. I have no arguments for you. I have no opinions. You can quote me as saying nothing that thou shouldst do or not do anything. Yeah. Here, we serve the text, baby. This is the museum. We serve the text. Let's look at what that text says. John, bring him up.
Okay, so here he is selling himself as the honest one without any motivation. And he only looks at the text and he's only translating the text. But we'll see in a moment that he's translating them very, very manipulative.
Jesus, he said, I am. And it says they went around to his back. They circled him. They went around him so he couldn't get away. and epesan hamai. They fell on him. They attacked. The Greek uses this for falling all the time. All the time. One enemy falls upon another. So they surround him and they take him. They start to arrest him. They grab him, right? And as they're going for him, Jesus says,
right. The Greek expert will know that hamai means to the ground, and picto is to fall hard. And it's talking about the people there who came to arrest him in John's account falling backwards. It's very clear. But for some reason, Ammon has to have it completely screwed and say that they're falling on him, they're surrounding him, that they went round to his back. That's just nonsense. I think anybody could see that knows the slightest bit of Greek.
Look at the first line, hos. Hos, look at the two first words of the next line. Epi leistein. Go ahead and take it down. You're coming at me as if you're coming against, or coming to arrest, or coming to apprehend a leistes. What is that? What is that? People like to translate it as robber. Robber. But that doesn't make it. That doesn't quite make it there. Jesus says, what are you guys so heavily armed for? What'd you come out against me for? When you look at your armed resistance, what'd you come out? Let's look at the there we go.
All right, I'll come back to that. Obviously, he's now trying to minimize the fact that leistes, yes, it can be translated robber or outlaw. The leistes were the ones that mugged the chap on the Jericho road that the Good Samaritan helped. They were violent thieves. They were violent people, and they were violent robbers. So it's a legitimate translation, but I think in the context it should be rebel.
There we go. Here's the definition of leistes, right? It's from Leidzo, for those of you who are in Greek, right? Good. And notice that they first give you robber or pirate, right? You think to yourself, wait a minute, pirate? Jesus is saying, what you guys come out here so heavily armed like I'm a pirate? Right? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's especially somebody at sea, so there's some kind of sea connection. That's where we're getting pirate, brigand, buccaneer, right? Buccaneer. Later, pirates. Now you know where you get the word pirate from. Yeah, but what are these? Shiver me timbers? These aren't the guys that make Johnny Depp look good. This is not that kind of a pirate, right? These are sex traffickers. Look at the very bottom. Used by Lycophron. Who is Lycophron? Lycophron is the poet who is preserving the song of Cassandra. Yeah, the song of Cassandra, who is the Bacchic Sibyl. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And you'll notice there in that Lycophron, it's okay, you'll notice there in that Lycophron that we have a reference to child abduction. Yeah, it turns out in antiquity, let me just lay this on straight. You want to come to the garden of grave delight. Here we are in this place. Take a whiff around. You know what you smell? You smell groups of traffickers who will sail into a port, jump off the ship armed, with enough force to overwhelm the local authorities, and kidnap, take prisoner, young men and young women, boys and girls. And if this kind of thing, where do they take them? They take them somewhere and traffic them to sell them, right? To sell them. It's not very nice. It's not very nice indeed. Yes, but this is the word. The leistes is the word for this trafficker. And so when Jesus says, "What'd you come out against me so heavily armed? What do you think I am, a trafficker?" The fact that there's a naked kid standing next to him.
Right. I could have paused a bit earlier. If you notice on the definition from the LSJ, that is, that he shows that dictionary, it's a metaphorical meaning in Lycophron. I'll talk a bit more about the Lycophron text in a minute, but the other thing to note is that it says later pirates, and that's true because leistes ceased to mean pirate when it went into Koine Greek. Pirates is the word for pirate in Koine Greek. So Jesus speaking leistes, can't be saying pirate because he would be saying pirate, pirates. So he's not that. So that's strike number one. Lace-days didn't even mean pirate in any of the scriptural texts that we have, because they're all in Koine Greek. And the other thing is the Lycrophon passage there is a metaphorical, and I will talk more about the Lycrophon passage soon.
You'll notice that translators since Tyndale have been following this same path. So you can track this man, Mr. Renner's education. You get it down to his education about where he came up with these ideas. When he says, I am, and lets off the glory bomb, causing all the soldiers to fall around, right? And by the way, that stuff he said about balance is not in that at all. It's not there at all. He's making stuff up. That's why I'm saying these are lies. He is making stuff up. There's nothing to do with staggering in that Greek, period. Nothing. They simply went around and took custody of him, right? Took him down. Yeah. It's a bust, right? It's a bust.
I'll let it move on.
Overwhelmingly bad. When this man takes you into the back, okay, and he starts this act, right? You don't know that his Greek is wrong. It is. Plainly, openly. Yeah.
Right. Really, the two of them together, he's saying that all of the biblical translators have been getting it wrong ever since Tyndale. And they've all been following this fairy tale of this great moral, upright Jesus and putting the word robber in there instead. So that was his play there,
Okay.
Because he's the Greek expert.
For those of you who want a little more context, by the way, with child sex trafficking in antiquity, there we go. With child sex trafficking in antiquity, sometimes it can get kind of formalized. And when the pirates show up, you have a certain number of, teens that they need to be given. Yeah, and that keeps them from coming back. They only come back once a year, right? And the mothers in antiquity are singing about these things. Yeah, about how terrible it is to be taken in those captive and to have your child ripped from you in order to enter into this garden of delight, where these kids are sold off.
And that's true. But he's trying to draw that into the Lycrophon text. And it actually has no relevance to it, apart from the mother's singing, the mother's mourning, but not for the reason that he's implying.
Talking about a time and a place, very specific things, very specific historical events. And the only thing that we can trust is the language. The language preserves this. The language preserves what the actual statement was that Jesus made. He said, you're arresting me. He said, what? You're arresting me like I'm a pirate of people. Like I'm a sex trafficker. So.
And I think that's fairly obvious. He is just placing that into the text. It can't be there, but he has woven his story very well so far.
You're arresting me like I'm a pirate of people. Like I'm a sex trafficker. So, known accomplices, prostitutes, and accountants. Arrested in a public park at 4 a.m. with a naked boy. Armed resistance was provided. So we think we've come to the place that Jesus regularly hangs out, where he does his biz. You don't see him doing any carpentry, do you? Right? But he is hanging out with prostitutes and accountants, with naked boys, in places that we know are the necromancers hang. It's a place to hang. Right? He's waiting there for the dawn. He's waiting there for the dawn. You know the process of trading children in antiquity is directly connected with cult mystery. Are you surprised? You shouldn't be. Jehovah has his Ganymede, right? We understand this. So we provide Jesus. It looks like we've got enough evidence to say that there is a direct association between Jesus, aka the Christ, and the sex trade, first century.
That's quite a masterpiece, putting all of that together and putting the insinuations there. Of course, Mary Magdalene, she wasn't a prostitute. That was only Pope Gregory saying that, she was involved with all these sins. She was the sinful woman. We don't know really who Mary Magdalene was. So somehow she becomes the prostitutes associated with Jesus's gang. And of course, the accountant is Matthew. So he is piecing together all these incriminating suggestions, and it becomes truth, of course.
You trust me. It's important to me to give you the most accurate information possible. So when I'm showing you those words, that's why I'm trying to give you the philological background, and to show you, hey, see this? It's just translating here this, right? Because I have nothing to sell you. Now,
again, this was his, you got to trust me, because I'm not here racketeering. I'm not here taking tithe offerings. I'm not here selling you merchandise. All right. So that makes him trustworthy, of course. And he's the great philologist, so he knows how to translate these texts properly, because he sees them with the view from ancient antiquity, and he knows all the medical texts, and he puts them all together and understands it that nobody else has.
God, I wanted to show you a little bit of the prophecy of Cassandra, and I wanted you to see there's some lovely imagery there, and some talk of what you can do with your daughters. You can dedicate your daughters to the temple, and they'll be protected. And we, as members of the community who worship Hecate and protect those virgins, we take up weapons, stones, bows, against those pirates who we catch with our children naked. It turns out the chief pirate is the Son of God. Get your hands off him. The parents were saying, get your hands off him. All right? Stop touching my children. That's what people told Jesus. He was like, don't scandalize me. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is.
And you heard there a couple of totally screwed up biblical references as well. But he did talk about the Lycophon poem there. It's called, it's Cassandra, is the prophetess who is being interpreted by Alexandra, which is Lycophon's poem, Alexandra. Yes, there is in this section where the lestes is mentioned, a paragraph where girls who don't wish to be married can be dedicated. That's true. And there's another passage where it's men are taking up the bull slaying axes and the stones, and they're watching out. But it is not for pirates to come and steal their children. It is about the Locrian maidens. Now you can wiki it and get all the detail, but long story short, the passage is talking about Cassandra's rape by Ajax. She was the oracle of Athena, and she was raped by Ajax on his way home after Troy. And the phrase in Lycophon is talking about the leader. It's talking about the army, the navy leader, the leader who sinned against the laws of marriage. He is the pirate of the Cyprian goddess, who's Aphrodite. And that really, pirate is the wrong word, because he violently stole. He's the violent robber of my Aphroditic virginity. That's what she's saying. So
Ali, I'm going to sort of hurry you along a bit because there's another 10-minute clip. So
okay, sure.
We don't have time to get into such minutiae of detail, so just try to keep it on the broad picture, if you can. Thanks.
Sure, sorry. So basically, the word lestes doesn't even mean pirate in there. The word lestes means robber anyway, but the way he's wound it together, it sounds like everybody's up in arms against robbers, pirates coming to steal children, and the text doesn't say that at all.
Jesus, right? At that time, Jesus said to the people, right? Why have you come out against me like a lestes with your big weapons, your big clubs, big swords? How come you've come out against me like I'm a lestes? All right? You don't do that to a thief. So the lie that has been perpetuated to you, the narrative about Jesus, he was crucified between two traffickers of humans. And in the middle, sitting right there in the middle, he was saying, I'm not one of these traffickers. And it's only because of that naked kid. It makes you wonder, if that naked kid hadn't been there with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, if the naked kid wasn't there with him, would he have had to have died? Would that crowd have been so angry? Isn't it going to be surprising when you find out Jesus Christ was crucified because he was a pervert who was selling children? Yeah, that's going to surprise people.
Right, I'll carry on there.
Oh, I'm sorry, children. Once you see the origin of your master, he can shovel whatever he wants into your mouth. You still got to look at him for what he is. And that is the great letdown, as they call it in future history studies. The great letdown, when human civilization learned through a satanic congregation that Jesus Christ was a trafficker, a sex trafficker of children. So drugged, oh God, who was it that told him that? Who was it? Go back, Chewie. Look it up. Do you know who did so? The Muse did so. That's who deserves the credit. Let's go. Give it to me. And she was like, you tell him, Mom, about this guy. You tell him. Just, look, this is some creepy stuff about he's going to come like a thief, kleptes. And there, for the people who say Elestes is a thief, no, this is the actual word for kleptes here. Right? You got to know, baby.
Right.
Okay, now we're...
Okay, that's enough of him. Whoops, sorry, I need to shut him up. Sorry. Let me just shut him up first, sorry. Okay, back to StreamYard. All right, so I think you can gather there. He very freely reinterprets and at the same time is completely dismissive of all other scholarship. Only he has the truth, of course. They're all clouded with their theology. They can't read the text properly because they're seeing it through their theological lens. You know,
when we've been over this, and I think, even if you hadn't speeded up that clip, I can't imagine anybody that I know watching that and not thinking the guy is just barking mad. So I think we just want to get into the depths of that insanity that Hillman seems to be embodying and inflicting on others. I don't think we need to beat around the bush here. There is somebody in his little cult commenting on Rumble, by the way, just for your information. Somebody goes by the name of Gandhi.
Jonathan Gandhi. Hi, Gandhi.
Yeah. So I can't remember if I was going to say anything now. Maybe that was all I wanted to say, really. Oh, yeah. What's his end game? What's his mission? What's he trying to bring about?
Okay.
The apocalypse.
All right. Well, this is the other reel. Now, having already pinned him as a trafficker, all the time he's outrage farming, and it makes it sound like he's just disgusted at this awful Jesus. I can put a link to a particular interview that he did where he outlines all the minutiae of a quite horrendous procedure that has to be done to young prepubescent children in order to prepare them to become the drug factory of the drug that he will then use for the performance of the mystery. I haven't yet said it, but I'll say it now. His mission is to bring back Lady Babylon, which, if you look in Revelation, she has this cup of porneia. And this cup of porneia, he is saying, is what is produced through her body, entered vaginally, but it is this particular cocktail that's absorbed by her, and then it comes out in the milk. And this was back in history, but now he wants to have priestesses prepared so that at the age of 12, where they're just budding, where the breasts are just budding, they're just coming into puberty, that apparently is when the most potent drugs are made. So he has to have children between the ages of 9 and 12 on a drug regime to be prepared for producing this antidote. And it's also a puberty blocker as well. And having produced this, which is that's the antidote, but the people are given another different cocktail of I don't know how many venoms as the death inducer to put them into a near-death state. and they will die unless they're given the antidote, which is only produced via a child's body. All right, so that is the essence of the mystery, and that you will hear is his intention to reproduce. And I will now share StreamYard. I'll present the other reel, and you can hear from his own mouth what he intends, or what his vision is, what his hope is, what he's leading up to.
What are we waiting for?
This is important. You'll get that.
Yeah, but we can't see it.
Oh, sorry.
You're not presented. It's not those.
Sorry, wrong one.
It's Ammon's vision. You need to share that one.
Yeah, sorry, I made a mistake there. You heard that.
Okay, present. Share screen. Ammon's vision, top one. Okay. Share. Done. That's it.
Right, we get there.
Baptists. Do you understand?
Right, I'll just take that back. Sorry about that. I don't want to play it all again. But I will talk about this 93 before we go any further. This is a fabricated number. I was in that live chat. There were well over 100 of us, and I saw maybe 2 or 3 not guilty verdicts. This is at the end of 2023, after he'd built up this seeming criminality of Jesus, and he had some rather bizarre crimes that we were supposed to be voting on. None of them was, oh, you were a wicked child abuser. None of that. But the essence of it, when you actually hear, is that he was trafficking, that he was profiteering, that he was basically doing it for money. And that is the vote. But he was so subtle slipping it in. I'm sorry I didn't catch the... I wanted to get that into the reel to begin with, but I just didn't have time to find that one. So the 93, for those that know Crowley's work, well, no, 93 is the number of Thelema. And Thelema is supposed to be practiced with love and respect. But for Ammon, that doesn't seem to be his operandum. And Thelema's dictum is, do what thou wilt, is the whole of the law, so that you can fulfill your purpose. And Ammon's purpose is to bring in the AntiChrist, and he has changed the word Christ to become a drug term. And I've not time to go through all of that. I will have a web page up for that. It's not complete yet, but I'll have a web page describing how he has twisted the word Christ into a drug term. But of course, an antichrist is the antidote. All right, so Christ is the dote, antichrist is the antidote. The antidote is this resurrection drug, which has to go through the child. So that's his purpose. He has to bring in the antichrist, the antidote. He has to find this. This is his mission, so that he can then offer this mystery to the world. You'll see.
Store the muse.
I'll move
Thank
it
you.
on a bit.
Kings.
I'll move it on a bit. Sorry, I'll find where he was the next one. There we go. And here's talk about
saying,
sadism.
no, this is not good to be profiteering, right, off of this basically slave trade.
That's right, I missed it.
Do you know why? Find out what's next.
Sorry.
Against the culture at the time that is saying, no, this is not good to be profiteering, right, off of this
basically slave trade.
Okay, right, you've got that.
Do you know
That's-
why we take up the cross? Because we're Baptists. Do you understand that in the mysteries there is sadism? If you don't understand that, you're not seeing antiquity. You're seeing the fairy tale, right, that came from it. But that's all you're seeing. You're not seeing genuine antiquity. Stuff that Jesus said won't make sense until you understand the actual words, the actual flavors that he's producing, right? You want to understand?
All right, got that.
Look at that human form. And then you can worship the human form. Oh my God, you worship the human form? Why would you do that? Because it's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of beauty. Do you see how monism saps the nature? Just like Paul was saying, it saps the nature out of the culture. Monism needs you to be detached from your natural roots so that when you look into the eyes of he or she whom you find beautiful, that there's that incredible thing that happens. Yeah. Ooh. Right? That's what we need to stifle. This is what Bacchus releases, is this power. This is what the Christ does.
Sorry that I can't think of the word. Anyway, they were out of sync. Sorry about that. Now that was quite an important clip. I want to talk about this one. His thrust is to return to the Greek way of morality to some extent. But he's accusing the monist religions, which are your Judaism, your Christianity, and your Islam that came out of, well, Abraham in the past. That he's accusing them of bringing in these very prudish regulations on sexuality, and they're false because they're going against nature. All right? This is how he twists things. And that it's natural to follow your natural urges, and this is what he endorses, which is what that clip was about. When you look in the eye of your beloved, how old is this person? There's no restriction because pederasty was, Zeus had his Ganymede. Nero had his, can't remember his name, Patroclus, can't remember his name, and it was normal. It was totally normal, quite okay with children.
Yeah, that's a Victorian sentiment, right? The guys are looking around like, not me. No. It's mostly in a bad sense. Yeah. Okay, now you know what the paiderastes is. And yes, we get our English word, pederast. The Christ who is in the position of opening the eyes. That Christ is the pederast. This is a direct link between the definition, the classical definition of a pederast, and the performance of the Christ mystery. Yeah.
And he calls it Christ mystery, doesn't he?
Thank you, Ammon. It's all dirty stuff. Dirty prophets doing sick acts. Things that make your stomach churn. Yet strangely interesting and attractive to us as victims of Eros. It's those of us who swim in that harbor of Venus. Those of you who are part of satanic initiation, who understand, who have eyes to see. Those of you who, from the throne, guide the world. Yes, I'm speaking to you.
All right, I'll stop there. This is a very bizarre charade he put on at the beginning of 2024. It's him dressed up as Satan, talking to him as Ammon. And there's a lot in that. I'm not going to bring it all up, but in that, because he had the 93, Satan has endorsed what he wants to do. He's commissioned him. He says Ammon holds the key to basically opening the apocalypse. And this is all a great boost of his own ego and his own mission, that he is now going to be initiating the apocalypse. Now, this whole season in 2024 is called Initiating the Apocalypse. And he has taught that the apocalypse can't happen until the theriac is found. And once we've got the dote and antidote, there will be these group of people who are going to be basically superhuman, able to be in the void, able to command demons. I didn't quite get the clip for that one in time, but there's a lot that he believes that these the people that go through the initiation end up as oracles, ends up as people that see outside of time, and they can see the future, and they can guide governments, and they can rule the world. That's his whole thing, that they will be behind this new utopian dream that he has of the world returning to that type of Athenian democracy where priestess oracles are consulted, and they will give the right advice, and they will be without the monism and all the restrictions and the prudishness. So that's part of what that's about.
Who bring honor to the house of Dawn.
Right, we'll move on.
Remember, people, keep this scientific. We don't care about ideas. We don't care about values. We don't care about morals. We care about evidence. That's it. We are scientists of the purest strain. I will wash that dark blood right out of you. I'll bring it right out of you. It's a purgation.
Yeah, notice purgation, all that, having morality, having values, having the things that are restraining your natural urges, he wants to purge, he wants to get rid of.
And I think that's why we need the antidote, right? That AntiChrist is an antidote. And it really is. It really is a knowledge. That's how it's represented in the text. You know what the big enemy is? The mystery. And if people learn what the mystery is, that will bring the end of the world. That knowledge will bring the end. I think it's gorgeous. I think people need to realize, at least to know this historically, that your ancestors, right, were doing a right. They would push you into death and then bring you back in order that you may lose or might lose your fear of death. And they all walk around afterwards saying, oh God, I'm born again, right? So maybe, Danny, is it possible that there's something out there naturally that we should be doing to reach the other side and get pulled back and realize, oh, this is what it's all about? It clicks and it makes sense. I don't know. You want to go join a mystery somewhere?
Yeah, I do want to join a mystery. I just I got scared. I'm reading Ruck's book, the one you sent me, and he was saying in the book that a lot of people actually died when they were doing the Eleusinian rituals, when they were practicing those rituals. A lot of them would accidentally overdose, and it happened a lot.
That's
so
why,
I would make sure we have to get the dose right. I'm a lightweight.
No, that's why they have so much antidote literature, right? We got to do this right, man. Whoever's coming up with the formula and stuff, those people have to be straight on. And we're going to lose a few people in the process. Every once in a while, the oracle, while she's sitting there prophesying.
Right. I will quickly talk about the other guest there. That is Danny Jones, who runs the Concrete podcast. And he did a very high-profile long interview with Ammon, and because of his clientele, Ammon's numbers have just shot up. He's really hit the big time with getting Danny on board, and then he invited Danny to come onto his show as well. But really, since the Danny Jones podcast in May of this year, his numbers are increasing incredibly. But did you notice he was saying, whoever's coming up with these antidotes, he's working on them. And I suppose I can slip it in here. If one of the sister podcasts or sister channels called, I think this one is actually on Occult Exploration Society or Drawing Down the Stars, but they host together. Two of his people host together. And this particular show is called V is for Venom, and it was shown in December of 23. And he's interviewing a toxinologist and another medical doctor. And they were very seriously talking about the effect of venoms on the body, and the toxinologist was very almost jokingly together, the two of them. When are we going to get the labs? How are we going to do this? Will it work just on rats? And, it's got to be not just cell culture. And there was a lot of chatter going on. And there was this sort of a call to, well, what about the morality of it? Because this is your children you're looking at. And it was said, oh, well, we'll have to basically go somewhere where it's, it's not as strict. So he said, well, maybe Brazil. So that was thrown out there. And I'm not at liberty to say some other things, but there was...
Let me interject, because you mentioned the puberty blockers having some connection, or that this drug is a puberty blocker. Somebody has commented in the chat, part of Ammon's CV was working in a lab isolating a hormone in sheep's brains which delays puberty. I don't know if you knew about that.
Yes, I
I'm
did.
sure you know that puberty blockers is part of the transgender transitioning program. So it seems as well. Is there a connection? Is there a connection?
There may be. It's for Ammon in the operation of the mystery. He wants to keep the children at the budding stage and not actually going through puberty. So having a puberty blocker, apparently, which is in this mixture of venoms and various herbals, and I don't know what it is, and I don't think he knows what they are. But this is what he is asking his the graduates from his Greek course. They are helping him with translation, and he's searching the texts for clues to what these other venoms are, what these other herbs are, what these other ingredients are.
If we're going to get into dialogue, I mean, hopefully soon, but I can hardly see you now. Can we finish the clip, and then you can end the screen share and we can continue?
Okay, sure.
Don't you want to go? People, do you know what we have to offer? We can take you into this temple. We can put you into a death state using an erotic drug rite. And then we can bring you out. And when you come out, you will not be the same. You will have gone to the furthest reaches. You will have gone through the dark star. Yeah, that's the physics. To the actuality of which we are the reflection. That's how they refer to, not me. And I know the guys at MIT are saying something similar now, right? That we're the reflection through the event horizon. Cool, right? Whatever the physics and how you describe them. This is what I can offer you people. Who wants to join the mystery? We don't care what your philosophy is beforehand. No, doesn't matter. We don't care what you studied or haven't studied. We don't care about any of that, right? All you've got to do is walk through the initiation. We'll get you there, and you will be born again. You will be born again. The only way we're going to get there is through her. Because you have to have the water of life. Do you understand? You have to have the aqua vitae. If you do not, you cannot bring somebody back from the dead.
What I would like to announce is the opening of a new temple. And that temple is everything. Omnia. Omnia is coming. The little twist in tonight is that Omnia is coming. Mr. Shadow has descended and has given us the go-ahead to create via his architecture, via his design, to create what will be the new museum. A place where you can come, where you can see that reality. Not a dead, stale place of exhibits, right? Not a place where somebody is going to put up some modules and charge you $5.95 for their terrible opinion, which is inevitably wrong, right, Chewie? Right? No, a non-profit. And this is one of Omnia's core values. None of this is for profit's sake. None of it. We preserve a sacred space for our history. We bring that from the ether. Omnia will bring an experience, a place for you to come, a place for the world to come and to partake of that mystery. Our goal is nothing less than the continuation, the reestablishment, and the continuation of that mystery. And you'll find it in the concrete, not in personality, not in cult. You'll find it in the concrete. It should be a place for you to come where you can explore a pathway that perhaps you wouldn't have explored before, that you can take something from those of you that have been left behind, those of us who have fallen before us. Time to raise them up and to restore classical civilization. A time for us to reset the clock and to bring back those very powers that governed a world that created democracy. Those powers. It's our task to bring back Sophia. It is our holy, holy responsibility to bring back Sophia. This will be Omnia. The classes are coming. Let's get serious. The classes are coming, and I'll have the platform up and going, and then we can figure out the way to farm an army, a Renaissance army. For those of you who have the call, you can feel it, right? People write to me, they're like, I feel it. I feel the call, right? It's something's pulling me, right? You may have seen something, a little serendipitous. These people are usually talking about serendipity. Yes. Yes, what is that? The verb is epiaste. The therion is uncovered. The therion is discovered. It doesn't say something about a brr. It says at this time, the theriac is uncovered. Look at the next. Give me just so they can see it straight out of the Victorians. Something that is determined, right? The theriac is unveiled. Yeah.
I'll just interrupt there. The theriac is basically the antidote.
Isn't that nice? Because once we have the theriac, we've got the beast. And what does the beast hold up? As you all know in Satanic Congregation, she who has the cup. Yeah, fantastic.
And that's taken from the beast. Theron is the Greek word, but he's put theriac into theron. And the beast carries the Scarlet Lady. The beast is carrying Lady Babylon. Okay, with her cup.
Fantastic. You cannot take these compound poisons of communion that allow you to enter death unless you also have a theriac with, unless you're carried by the beast. That's how it works. Look, here at Ammon Core, we're going to send you there and back. You are explorers. You're going to go there. And where is there? There is beyond the dark star. You'll come back and you'll fill us in. You'll then know what is beyond, and you won't fear death anymore. Yeah, isn't that nice? It's a side effect of this whole process. So welcome to Ammon.
Right, I'll stop there. I think you've gathered what his vision is there.
Can you unscreen share?
Yeah, sorry. I will stop sharing. Right.
Right. What's he got written on the side of his head? He's shaking his head. I've been shaking my head.
Yeah. He's got, I'm trying to put it on this side, he's got Medean in Greek. Yeah. And on this side, he's got Medean in the old Mycenaean script.
Okay. What's he got written on his chest?
I don't know what's on his chest, but if he ever shows this arm, that has on it greed stains your soul with the stench of ruin, which is overquote. Okay.
I probably saw the Martin Scorsese version of Cape Fear, One Time Too Many. How much of a Crowleyite is he? Like, how open is he about being a Crowleyite and following Crowley and trying to finish Crowley work? Is that up front or is it not?
Well, one thing I haven't said yet is that there are two levels of the Lady Babylon. In April of 23, he opened a private server, which is invitation only for really the ones that he handpicks that he thinks are going to be loyal and really 100% with him. The lower level, which is public, is at Myth and Law, and really anybody can join that, and there's a link to that. A lot is discussed there. But what happens and what is discussed by Ammon really happens in the private server. When you enter the private server through initiation, but not this drug, death and resurrection, but there are 3 routes of initiation. You can go through Heracles, which is put a dress in, if a guy dresses in lingerie and puts on a blonde wig and you take a picture, and there's other things you do, but that's the Heracles gone. Aphrodite is basically have a one-night stand, take up a new lover, and the Bacchus one is that you have to head shave like he has. So there is a process you've got to go through in order to get into the main server, and there you basically become Satan's servant. I won't talk about all the things that I know from a friend that had been through it and then came out. But
or maybe another occasion. But so you're saying publicly he doesn't acknowledge Crowley's influence?
No, not much
at all.
There was one show that he was reading from Marquis de Sade about the 120 Days of Sodom. I think trying to test how people reacted to that horror. So he was looking for those that could be purged, I think. But this was a lot early on. But what happens and what is discussed, I don't know. But certainly Crowley's works are on his recommended reading list. I can.
Yeah, well, it's very obvious, very apparent in what he was saying, and you were underscoring about the beast and the cup of Babylon, because that's Crowley's tarot card. That's the imagery with the serpents, and that's the snake venom. It all seems like an attempt to some sort of Crowleyanic working.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do now, because I want to try and keep it to 2 hours this time around. Anyway, who knows, we may do a follow-up. But we've covered an awful lot, and I think everybody's got a suitable impression of this guy and what's going on there, even though I'm sure there's a whole lot more. So I'd like to at least give people an opportunity to jump in if they want to, because they've taken the trouble to be here. But I'm not sure what direction to go in. I mean, the one thing I would like to bring up, even though I don't know if Ali will have it, if you'll have any comments about this, or if anyone else will, there was the comment in the chat about the working on the sheep puberty blocker, but it has to do with how much is Hillman, how much is he self-created, how much is he self-initiated, how much is he just possessed by God only knows what cultural or metaphysical entities and egregores, and a self-made man, and how much, because the things that he seems to be promoting do seem to be consistent with a much larger agenda that I've been tracking and mapping pretty much my whole life, and that I kind of fell into myself from the first decade or so, as in I fell under the spell of these kinds of ideologies and philosophies. So I'd like to ask anyone here, really, if anyone knows anything or anybody has any guesses about how much Hillman, and we'll start with Ali, how much Hillman is not a lone agent. I mean, he doesn't charge money. Well, where's his money coming from? How much may he actually be an asset, an instrument, a sock puppet for something much larger? Is this something that you've considered, Ali, or that you've heard people speculate about?
There's a couple of points I can make. Is nobody else is giving him money. He's actually struggling financially. And because of that, he started another whole round of Greek tutoring. Online, he has online Greek lessons, which are very, very limited. But he knows that to get people to the standard he wants to help him, he needs them on a one-to-one. So he has an American group, a European group, and an Australian group, 9 students each. So that's 27 people who are actually paying for their tutoring. So that is now his income. So he doesn't mind charging for just teaching Greek, but he will not take any money that is connected with the Lady Babylon. So,
Okay.
Right?
Well, fair enough. I mean, somebody's just made a more nuanced question, which is than my own, but it's closely related. Has Hillman named any mentors? Has he learned this from any pre-existing groups? Are there any indications about that?
Right. I was also going to say my second point was that somebody in the Reddit group, who is himself a Mason, was saying that he's letting out Masonic secrets here. And Ammon himself in one of his shows said, "Ooh, I've had the Masons, contact me." So something was happening there. And this person in Reddit was saying, he's saying secrets that Crowley would charge $1,000 for. So Ammon knows an awful lot more than he's actually presenting. Now, there is a Mr. Shadow. You heard that. Now, he was in the secret server through the winter of 23-24. And whoever this Mr. Shadow is apparently gave the go-ahead, maybe promised finance to produce a facility, because he will need a facility. And what he was talking about, this museum, this place where you can go and experience, means he has got very clear designs, whether or not they can ever be actualized. But he has very clear designs. He has stated his intention that he wants to do the whole mystery, which includes using children. And they will need to be kept somewhere, and they will need to be processed beforehand for up to 3 years. And other shows he's talked about how the drugs can keep the kids sedated, and other drugs can make them forgetful, and you can do whatever you like once they're under. He's said a lot that he's just drawing from the ancient antiquity, but there's very often a little aside given right at the end of his show. And one of them, where he was talking about what drugs can do, he said, the Cora is on her way. And then Hail Satan, which is how he finishes. If you listen out, very often there's these tiny little asides, like, I know you're out there. I know you want this. Just little bits and pieces that makes me think he is communicating to somebody else. But I don't know what, and I can only leave that there and say this is what I've heard. I don't particularly want to say, yes, this is definite, but this has been happening. So I don't know much more than that. Sorry.
Okay. Does anyone want to jump in? I'm thinking particularly of Rupert or Daniel, because you have more familiarity with this subject, but it could be anyone. But I just want to present the opportunity. If anyone has been chomping at the bit.
You all look absolutely mind blown.
Well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, I mean, I am mind blown, because my exposure to Ammon Hillman was a couple of very sympathetically presented podcasts on Wake the Dead, in which he covered a lot of the revisionist reinterpretation of texts and antiquity, but not anything about wanting to bring it back. It seemed more that, as I think you put it, outrage. Like, he seemed outraged by it, and that was the presentation there. It was only like this discussion he had with the psychonaut guy from Vice, where it became clear that, oh my God, he really wants to bring this back, and obviously you've made that very clear, which casts him in a whole different light, far more sinister light than I understood.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so you're a good case study, or what have you here, Daniel, because you're reasonably discerning, maybe unusually discerning, but you're saying you didn't really smell a rat the first time around.
I mean, he seemed very odd. Like, his affect is strange. But again, I guess, I sort of took the host's sympathetic presentation of him. And again, he has some very interesting philological points to make. Some that, I could evaluate, and many I could not. And sort of centering entheogens and drugs in the story of antiquity seemed, and his biography is very interesting. I think Ali went over that, and then I really just looked at my chemical muse, which did seem like a pretty legitimate work. It wasn't until I saw him on that Vice interview, and then looked at a couple of his Lady Babylon videos that, what was apparently very clear to you when you first saw him, sort of came across that this is not academic research. This isn't correcting the historical record. This is a sort of insane desire to bring back these horrifying practices. And it was interesting. Even the guy from Vice, Hamilton, was it like, are you serious? like you really want to do like that? There might be some obstacles there, like ethics, or like, oh, well, could we do it with AI? Was sort of his deflection. So it was not very convincing. So yeah, I for whatever discernment I may have, like it did not come across at first that he had this purpose, that it seemed like more research and education. I guess he emphasized, and even Ali, you said he's a good teacher. He does, he speaks well, and past his strange affect, like he speaks well. So yeah, I was a bit taken in, I guess.
I think it might be a good approach actually for the next few minutes anyway, just to check in with everybody and just get your impressions. I mean, it's just some people are familiar, at least one person's already familiar with Hillman, not counting Daniel, but I'm not sure about Alex. I'm pretty sure Guy has never seen the guy before. Obviously, we could be accused of stacking the deck against the guy because these clips were cherry picked, but nonetheless, it's in his, the horse's mouth. So this is how he represents himself. So yeah, let's just go around the room. Like I guess Rupert's the first on my thing. Can you just give a few impressions of Ammon? Doesn't have to be based on today, but just overall what you think of the guy. Let's start with Rupert.
I see a injection of like AntiChrist 2.0 into the modern situation, especially riding on the waves of psychedelics, kind of pandering to that crowd.
How much exposure have you had to the guy?
It's very, very little, cursory.
Right. So was there ever a time where you thought he's interesting, besides as a possibly or definitely toxic cult leader? Interesting. I mean, interesting as in
Just right off the bat, toxic cult leader.
Right off the bat. So that was my impression too. As I said, it took 30 seconds. Really. Actually, I kind of feel more drawn to him. I mean, less repelled by him, rather. Having watched Ali's clips, maybe something to do with the affect that Daniel's talking about. I see certain qualities are not a million miles away from Whitley Strieber. The guy is obviously traumatized. He's obviously possessed, I would say, and that gives him charisma. He has charisma. I'll give him that much.
Yeah, an NLP like pacing to his sermons,
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right, Guy, what do you think?
Well, what I find funny is the ability of people to take his celebration of dream raping people and the castigation of Jesus Christ as a pederast as a negative in the same, coming out of the same mouth and being fine with that. So he's clearly, to put it blunt, he's kind of fucked, and he does have a charm, and he's going to attract the people who are kind of screwed up. The other thing that struck me is part of the conversation at the end of it there is the extent to which he's aligned himself or is part of the energy, which is in fact doing exactly what he described with children, which is this whole puberty blocker, child mutilation, drug thing. To what extent are we in fact already doing what he's describing as something that wants to be done, as opposed to a return? To me, I don't see it anymore as a return. This has been going on for a long time, one way or the other, with or without different kinds of drugs. And the other thing that's interesting to me is that in my own encounters with the whole COVID world is the exposure to me of the presence of venom as part of the master plan, right? So there's a huge, in my mind, there's a huge pile of evidence which is completely suppressed on all sides of the fence about the role of venom in the rolling out of the COVID, both in terms of the fake pandemic and also to the fake vaccine. So the link to venom is really, really interesting. And of course, virus actually means venom. That's kind of funny too. So yeah, he's a cult leader for sure. There's no question. And it's really interesting to see for me just how easy we can overlook total hypocrisy so long as we are disengaged from our bodies, which of course is what this whole mystery is about. You disengage from the body through a gateway, through drugs, through a kind of an artificial near-death experience, and you disengage the children from their bodies through a drug process. It's, I think it's just a continuation of what's going on for a long time. That's my thoughts anyway.
All right, thanks, Guy. Alex, what do you think? Well, had you seen this Hillman before? And
yeah, I'd seen him before on a few interviews. I can't remember which came first, but during me research into Joy Division, I was listening to the song Atrocity Exhibition, and one of the lyrics, "This is the way, step inside." And then I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I ended up, I found his book on a Telegram channel after I'd watched a couple of interviews, and I was a little bit drawn by the just how disturbing and dark. I'd never looked into early Christianity and the way, anything like that. This was my first sort of exposure to that, which, so I don't know, maybe, but if that happens for other people as well, that could be, quite an unpleasant experience. I didn't read too much more into it, but it does remind me. What struck me was that I didn't want to really use the word charisma, but I know what you mean, and his affect and his eye movements. He strikes me as an actor, or certainly using particular techniques to draw people in. And I would be curious to carry on following him, tracking how his popularity develops. And I couldn't help but think of Jazz Coleman when he was talking, that sense of theatricality, and and I know Jazz Coleman has links with Lucis Trust, and which he believes is the spiritual arm of the United Nations, and he did work in Eastern Europe with a very famous composer, and in East Germany with I don't know who it was exactly, but he did the Great Invocation. He did the music around the Great Invocation, which is United Nations production, I believe. And I just thought that's what occurred to me when I was trying to think, who could this guy be involved with? I was curious to hear about the CIA at the beginning, well, not earlier on from Ali, but yeah, I wonder how it will play out with him, and how he will be used. I think he will definitely be used one way or another.
Who mentioned the CIA?
I thought I heard Ali say that some of the people who he was initially knocking about with he was at a quite high level university course just before MIT was mentioned.
Could well be somebody, because Jeffrey Epstein was connected to MIT as well, so somebody's commented that he might be connected to that infotech network.
Yeah, MIT is also pretty strongly connected to the whole deep state kind of thing as well. There's lots of evidence pointing in that direction too.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions for Ali, including on Rumble in the chat, seize the moment, take advantage of her being here with us. And otherwise, Ali, I mean, the floor's yours again. If there's some things that you haven't got into, got about another half an hour, a bit less maybe.
Yeah, I'll ask Ali a question if that's okay. This is going to sound kind of like a funny question, maybe, but were you drawn to investigating his philology? I guess basically is what attracted you. His ability to look at the language of the Bible. Is that what attracted you? Oh, can't hear you.
You muted.
Sorry. It was that he had a knowledge from his own research that would help me with my research, because I was looking at evidence to pin on identifying who this synagogue of Satan were, and the practices they were doing. And in 1 Timothy is my particular project, where I see it as a coded rebuttal of the three-tiered Gnostic system that was going in the 2nd century, and it's written in the 2nd century. It matches very, very well. So, and my feeling was that the woman that was being told to basically to calm down, that is the word, and Hesuchia is to be calm, to be in quietness, but is to be in tranquility and calmness. And I thought, well, why is she? And it seemed very reasonable to me that she was very much like the typical ecstatic prophetess who would go into a trance and be ecstatic while they prophesied, and the prophesying was their teaching. So that was my suspicion. So finding Ammon was talking about about that sort of entheogens and the ecstasies, I thought, oh, good, I would just want some more information from this. So that was really only the reason why I got hold of him. But then he invited me to join in with them. I thought, well, there's a lot of very interesting, very useful, very wonderful people in the Myth and Law Discord. I had good connections with many of them. I contributed my own research. They contributed there. It is a wonderfully eclectic community. It's great. And I'd say, that there's some wonderful things happening there. I don't have a thing against anybody in the Myth and Law. Although some of them obviously are as much in the Lady Babylon secret server, and they have an issue with me because of the way I've been doggedly trying to bring the alternative voice, which is not being said. And I want to be that alternative voice to say, look, the facts don't line up with what Ammon is saying. The facts are, and I can post, and I was doing in the comments. So that was my involvement because of my own research. And I soon thought, what he knows of the Bible, if he did know the Bible, he's not representing it at all well. And he's teaching it in a very underhand way, I felt. So that's why I started pushing back.
Yeah, what struck me is, as I was watching you go through your discourse there, was that for some reason you've been kind of asked to be the torchbearer to unveil that. And the second thing is that I almost laughed out loud when he said, we are doing the science. And I thought, oh yeah, he is doing the current science. I just laughed. Yeah, everyone thinks science is a certain thing, but it's actually just bogus in a way. So yeah. Okay, thanks for your time, Ali. It was really quite enlightening in a way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on that point that he's doing his own science, somebody's asked a question I was going to ask, so that's nice to be in tune. This is Grampong. He's asking Ali if you can speak towards who Chewie is, because we maybe noticed that Ammon was referring to Chewie once in a while in those videos, and Ammon's potential use of his underage daughters, plural, in producing adult content for Lady Babylon.
Okay, when I was connected with him in September 22, I did a Zoom call with him, and there was some noise in the background, and he laughed. He said, "Oh, sorry, you know what it's like when you've got a 14-year-old." Okay, I just this is before I knew anything else. So I twigged a 14-year-old. I've not talked about another person I know who was in fact very high up in the Secret Lady of Babylon server. She appeared on the sister shows, but she felt there was something not going right here, and at the same time was hearing a lot of complaints and tried to raise these complaints and just had them smacked back in her face. And she was then treated as anathema. She left, and there's been a lot of damage limitations since then. All the work that she did has been expunged. So there was a lot of quite vicious lashback at this other lady who left, and several left with her. There was a big ruckus. But she was saying that she has talked with Chewie. Now, Chewie is short for Chewbacca. He likes to think himself as Star Wars, and we don't know Chewie's real name. But the friend said that she had a long conversation with her about a side interest, and that Chewie is the younger daughter. And if one of them was 14 in 23, sorry, how old is she now? Well, maybe she was just 15 and he still called her 14, and maybe she's 17 now. I don't know. But it's Chewie who is very, very talented at creating the AI images, which you haven't seen. I didn't display those, but there are some horrendously creative ideas that display children with this sort of Jesus character drooling over them, and it's quite disturbing, a lot of what she produces. I haven't even talked about other teachings he has, which are as weirdly bizarre. But at the moment, it is fairly evident that at least one of his daughters is, for the States, legally still a minor, and yet involved very heavily with helping him running the shows. They feed the information up for him. So that is answering Graham's, I know Graham, that's answering Graham's question there.
Right. Has he made any hints or suggestions that he is practicing what he preaches in terms of extracting this drug from children via sexual molestations?
I would say no, there's not been any evidence of it, but he certainly stated intention for it. I wonder myself whether or not it's just a side comment, but being a non-profit, do religious societies have certain legal exemptions to practice their religion? And there's an umbrella that will incorporate whatever practice they need to do to practice their religion. It's a question. So at the moment, there's no indication that he has been practicing, because he hasn't got the drugs, but he's searching for them. I didn't have time to search for amongst my hundreds of other defunct clips, the ones that I needed to then re-record. But he has certainly made an indication, and one of those clips I did with Danny, that whoever's working on these, it's almost like it's an ongoing project. And he has this toxinologist that he was talking to, this venom expert that he was talking to. So I am not saying that he is, but there are certain pointers where make of it as you will. That's the only information I have that I can offer.
What kind of psychedelics is he encouraging people to take, or that he himself takes?
Right. Every show in the old seasons, it was, are you sitting on your throne? And that is code for, have you taken your cannabis? Are you spaced while he's teaching? And he himself, I know, has a very strong reaction to cannabis. I have an email string of him describing to somebody else his very, very vivid hallucinations. And I know that this other person shared the same cannabis and the same amount, and this other person had no reaction. And it was obviously that, he is very, very sensitive, certainly to, it was apparently a strong mix of cannabis, but, he was certainly very, very receptive to it. And I'll make a speculation. I'm not saying that this is true, but it is known that people who are very receptive and perceptive and sensitive to hallucinogens, there's a release of L-dopamine, and that has its own nice effect. But a brain that has been subjected to a lot of L-dopamine very quickly starts making connections that aren't there. It's apophenia, where you think that this and that, and you get, you very easily become sort of like mission, I'm called, I have, it's something that very much feeds into cult mentality. But this joining of dots business, this is what I think he's talking about with the muse. She shows him, or he finds a word in the text, and he knows, oh, Galen uses that word that way. Oh, and in the Orphic hymn, it was there. And you'll look at the LSJ, and you'll say, oh, this, and all that. And it becomes truth. He's made those connections. And then he puts it into the biblical text. He's doing backwards translation. He knows what he's aiming for, rather than letting the text unfold itself.
Does anyone take him seriously in the field of biblical studies that you know of?
I don't believe so. There is one person who he will look up to as a mentor almost, but not really. And that's Professor Carl Ruck. He's one of the co-authors of the Eleusinian Mysteries, The Road to Eleusis. And Ruck has written some excellent articles. They're all free in Academia Edu. And Ruck has used the Orphic Vox a lot. He has used it to decipher the Orphic hymns. And there's a lot of drug terms there, which is what Ammon has used in his Chemical Muse. Now, Ruck apparently endorsed his own retranslation of sections of Revelation, where a pill, the trochis, well, the word trochis can mean wheel. Ezekiel had wheels in his vision, and the Lady Babylon, there's 7 seals, and that word again is trochis. It just means a round disc, all right? But because it's also a pill, the 7 seals are 7 pills. All right, you see how he makes the connections? So he's redone Revelation all in drug terminology. He's found the words that he can then import drug cult into. So he reads very differently. And he asked Carl Ruck, would you endorse what I've done, as if this is Orphic Vox? And Carl said, yeah, that's a fine reading. So he's had that one endorsement from an expert.
Yeah, it's an important one. I mean, as you've mentioned to me earlier, he coined the term entheogen, which of course connects hallucinogenic psychedelics to a spiritual experience by suggesting that you get filled with God if you take enough drugs. Also, John Allegro, this book, Jesus Was a Mushroom. So it seems as though Hillman is riding on a wave that has been around for at least 100 years, this correlation between spiritual, divine numinous experiences and psychedelic drug taking.
Can I ask, do you know when and or what sort of ended his affiliation with academia?
Well, he was given the sack from the St. Mary's University. It was a big hoo-ha about his use of the Passiona. And apparently, because the way he was teaching Greek, and a lot of it is because of his own interest, a lot of it was about the raucous sex and, you know, the Bacchic manias, and it really inspired the girls, and they were watching all sorts of stuff at home, and they were, you know, they were so turned on by it. And I think the university were actually getting rather, we're not so keen on the influence he's having on our girls. So I think that fed into it, and basically he was put, hermeneutics itself seems to be a word mentioned, kind of limbo. Yes, could be. The end effect was that he was sacked, but he needed an income, so they employed him as a janitor. So he was still in the environments, but eventually left that completely, and that's really the last time he was in academia. So he's done his PhD. That was his last formal thing. He was asked by John Scarborough, I think it was John Scarborough, who asked him, could you do Galen's translation, because you've got the expertise. He's done his bacteriology, he's got the medical, well, at least chemical background, and he's got the expertise from his classics. So he seemed the ideal person to try and translate Galen's work. And for anybody's watching who doesn't know who Galen was, he was the doctor who was the, he was the physician to Marcus Aurelius. So you're looking at 2nd century. And he's written 22 huge volumes on all the ins and outs of what drugs do. And of course, these are the herbal drugs, these are the venoms, these are the roots, these are the, you know, all the stuff that was available then. So he's got tomes of information, mostly totally untranslated yet. So this is what Ammon has been trying to do. But while he's doing it, he's looking for hints of what this drug will do. Oh, that might be part of the ingredients. So this is what he's doing. And I'm pretty sure the motivation for having these free Greek lessons is to, and I know that every week, those who have graduated, every week they have a translation session with Ammon. So I don't know what they're translating, but apparently every week they have a translation that they help him with his translating, or they are translating with him. So.
So earlier today you mentioned, I can't remember what the context was, but how Hillman would make suggestions about where this was all going, and then gauge who was going to be morally offended by that, and then focus on the ones who weren't, which I think is a strategy or a tactic of deviance for finding obviously people that they can work with who aren't going to expose them if they start revealing exactly what they're doing. So I'm curious in this regard, I mean, on the point you just ended on, even how much of what Hillman is doing is a Trojan horse to get inside people's psyches. Also the Fabian method of being a wolf in sheep's clothing. If he can introduce himself to audiences as a biblical scholar who has these very interesting ideas and interpretations, and or a Greek scholar who can teach people Greek, then little by little, this is grooming really, is he introducing his real beliefs, philosophies and intentions in such a way that by the end of that process, the first stage, let's say, he's got the people that he wants, and then he can take them to the next phase. It sounds to be more or less what you're describing. So I guess my question is what kind of people is Hillman looking for? What kind of people is he actually attracting? Because it seems bizarre to me that somebody who'd be interested in biblical study would ever be receptive to his ideas, right? That Jesus was raping children in order to extract some venom and get high. It's so preposterous, right? These are two worlds that you wouldn't think there'd be any kind of overlap, but clearly he is finding people who are drawn for one reason and then manage to stay the course to become drawn into the other. So what kind of people are we talking about? I mean, yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I will put a question back to you. Why is it that you have priests who end up doing black masses? Yeah. So there are people who like that cloak. But I would say that he doesn't present himself really as a biblical scholar. He absolutely disdains biblical scholars. He is a Greek philologist. You need to know Greek to understand the Bible, both Old and New Testament. He has another teaching, I won't go into all now, but I've got it on the page on my website, that the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, was originally composed, the whole of it, in Greek, and then subsequently translated into Hebrew, which is obviously shown very, very clearly isn't true at all, but he insists on it. Now, the reason is because he can then say that the authors were writing with the Orphic Vox, and they were putting drug terms into the Old Testament stories, because if there was a Bronze Age mystery, which Jesus is perpetuating, you ought to see some of his forebears doing it. So he picks on Moses, he picks on Abraham, he even picks up Tobit, and so he picks up a few, and Ezekiel with his wheels, his pills there to see his visions. So he's sort of dotting around the Bible, reinterpreting it as drug trafficking, pirates who, trafficking and drug taking and molesting children. Because, you don't know what Abraham was really doing with Isaac, do you? But he'll tell you. So this is part of the build-up he has. There's so much else that I could say, but really that's enough at the moment about his teaching.
Yeah, well, it is a very large picture, actually, because it's talking about you've touched on this, that he's appealing to people who really want to go back before the Judeo-Christian system of morality and values, back to the Greek ways where you could get away with anything you want. And there is a kind of, there is a school of thought that I just come across, which is pretty much Plato wrote the Old Testament, not literally that, but is what you're touching on there, I think. And then the Jews kind of screwed it up by misinterpreting it, etc., etc., is what you've touched on. So it may well be, and this is very Crowleyanic, that he's attracting people. I don't know if it's a mixed group or how mixed it is, but I'm going to imagine there's quite a lot of young men, or older men for that matter, who feel oppressed by Judeo-Christian morals and want to be liberated and do what thou will, right? And get all of these titillating, perks under the guise of discovering these ancient secrets and so on. And so, as you said, that's kind of the oldest con there is.
Yeah. I'll pop in here. Most of the people in Myth and Law are ones that may have had a Christian experience. Very few would still call themselves Christian, but have had bad experiences with the church and have basically what he's presenting of Jesus is a great endorsement of why they don't want to be in this abusive church anymore, because look at the abusive forebear. So there's certainly that, but most of them, they have their own little shrine, their own little goddesses that they pray to. When I was there, they were all sort of showing, pictures of the shrine, or I've just bought this stone, or I've just got this crystal. And, so there's a lot of alternative spirituality going on in the Myth and Law. And they aren't even trying to be Christians. So they're not even really interested in the Bible, and they don't read the Bible. But it's a great titillation for him to be tearing down the fairy tale Jesus. So, really that's the people that I have met, that I know of. And I also hear him, if you remember, those that feel they've got the call. Unfortunately, my clip, I had it wrong. He was saying he was going to have a ground course on the mystery. All right. And then from there, it was somehow we're going to farm a resurrection army. And then later on, it was, these are the ones in Ammon core. So there will be another layer, another group that he will then farm out of, the Lady Babylon and the Myth and Law, or other people that have felt the call, that have understood what he's wanting to do, and they will contact him, so that he will have a group of people who don't mind sadism, because sadism is only the thought of going against, basically love one another, but that's a Judeo-Christian thing. We don't go with that. So there is an undercurrent there, which I don't think I'm wrong in detecting, in that he is putting out an appeal for a certain type of people who will embrace that sort of sadism. I think most of the people I've met wouldn't, and I think they'd be quite horrified to hear me saying this. But this is something that I don't know. Yeah, the Bacchic rites, I was going to bring that up. Thanks, Graham. One thing that the Bacchic rites do, when you have gone wild like that, it takes off your inhibitions, and the type of person that you actually are becomes evident. This is something that I think might have been this Masonic secret that he's been letting out. I may be totally wrong. But I can also point to Plato's book 9, beginning of that. He talks about when you're dreaming and the normal constraint that you have when you're awake has gone, you do all sorts of wild things in your dreams. All right? So it's this idea of the Bacchic rite. We'll just take off that restraint and let out the real person that's inside. And if that real person inside is quite happy to do disgusting, wild things, Plato's got quite a list of wild things that he says these people will do. I think that is part of the process. And I know that that was part of the process of the Gnostic groups. They were looking for that as well. They called it was like, like a perfumer could detect the type of person that you were inside. But
which Gnostic groups?
Hippolytus writes about the Scythians, and these are one of the Ophite groups. They've got the Narcenes, the Peretai, and the Scythians, and they were all semen communion people. The Scythians used a paraphrase of Seth, but what is written by Hippolytus in there very much mirrors with the paraphrase of Shem. Now, the paraphrase of Shem is quite difficult to understand, but it is talking about the spiritual group are the Sodomites, and it talks about the unclean penis and the rubbing. Now, the unclean penis is the one that will create more matter, but the clean penis is basically one that will produce the semen but is never impregnated. So you're looking at the type of Gnostic that Epiphanius described, the ones that will do the semen communion. They will bring the woman to ecstasy but not ejaculate in them, and they will then partake of their own. But apparently they oil themselves up with a sort of like an abortifacient, which would stimulate the womb to release some blood, so that there was the blood and the wine, or the wine, the bread and the wine for their communion. That was the idea of that. So, I've done a lot of research in that area, and I didn't really want to burden you all with that. But when Ammon is talking, I am seeing the exact process that I'd already deduced happening with the Gnostics. And one of them is blasphemia, which literally means calling right wrong. It's turning things upside down. And you hear Ammon talking, and his groupies talking about flipping the poles, switching the poles. I don't even know if they know what they know that they're talking about, basically flipping the poles on your moral compass. So right becomes good, good becomes bad. And this is a process of teaching until eventually you've adopted and you've taken the teacher's alternative moral system. Now Ammon's alternative moral system is the classical one, where it doesn't matter what age child, if it's something that's attractive to you, it is natural. You go with nature. That's the Greek way, he was saying. So it's just been wave after wave to try and invert the morality. So, you know, I saw that happening, and it was just been an amazing case study, actually seeing it practiced, of what I'd already deduced was happening in the Gnostic cults. So, which is Crowley again. So, yeah, it's been very interesting for me to see it all happening.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. One of the things that struck me too in one of his clips that he showed was his ability to bring people near death so that they are alleviated of the fear of death. Right. Now, what my thinking is that that's kind of like I want to say a lost leader in a sense. It's actually the trick to bring people into the practice to begin the process of actually becoming, as you say, these flipped individual. So you draw people in through the fear of death, you bring them close to death, you've saved them, and then you now can get them to do the abominations, if you want to call it that, or the contrary nations of life. Just so what's your thought on that? It just struck me funny to throw that in there.
Just so you know, we're going to wind up maybe in the next 5 minutes or so. So move towards summing up, perhaps.
I don't really know what to comment on that. He's not offering that. Well, say he wants to offer the death and resurrection experience. It isn't in practice yet, but that is what he's wanting to offer. And you go through it and you come into a state where you are what he calls in the ereimon, in the desert, in the void, where you're outside of time, you're outside of space, you're in that whatever it is in your head, where you can control demons, where you have authority, where you hear the daimons, the godly messengers, you hear them, you're part of a different world. And this is what he's wanting to experience, and to have try and put more people through it, so that they're all in this sort of like superhuman class of people that have been through his death and resurrection mystery, who have ionic life, which is the proper Greek for eternal life. But the ionic is it's an age, it's beyond the ages life. So that's what he's hoping to offer to people. He's not experienced it, but I think having hallucinogens gives you a little taste of it when you're out of your body in that sense. But I think he believes that there's a more prolonged experience that can happen. That if you go through his alleged Christian mystery, it doesn't exist. And this is one thing I want to finish with, really. With my extensive reading in the Gnostic literature and the heresiologists and the apologists, also even in the New Testament, the system that all of the Greek mystery religions were doing was, in order to get through the layers of heavens, which they had believed from Aristotle, from Pythagoras, a lot of them have these layers of heavens, and they were supposed to all have rulers, archons, that were placed there from the demiurge, who created these to rule the underworld, to rule the lower heavens and the earth. So for a soul that is trapped in matter, in the prison of the body, once it's released, it's not free yet. It has to get back to the pleroma, and it has to have the knowledge to get through these layers and to defeat the archons, or to have the pass, which again is that's from the Orphic plates. That is something that they did practice then. You have your passport to heaven, your passport to the other life, because you'd say, I am the star, I'm a child of earth and starry heaven. you know who you are. This is the thing about Gnosticism. You find out who your progenitor was. And if your progenitor was the spiritual one, you are exempt from any filth that you put yourself through, because that remains pure and you could do whatever you like with your body. So that was their justification for doing the libertine actions, but they also believed they received grace through the reception of the semen. That was their means of having their spiritual nature matured. But the thing is, there is no literature anywhere that is rebutting a death and resurrection mystery to get ionic life. There is nothing in any literature anywhere. All of it is rebutting this type of, we have to get through the heavens, all right, which is not Ammon. Ammon has invented this. It was never real. It was never rebutted. It was never, and you can be sure that they weren't going to pretend that, oh, we know this really was the correct thing. This is what Jesus was doing. And, we're going to keep it hush hush. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to attack these people. This is Ammon's thesis, that Jesus's mystery was carried on in secret in the crypts, and that all the child sex abuse that's happened through the church came from Jesus. All right. And he's written a whole book called Original Sin, which is about the sin of the church. He's put a lot of very dicey non-quotations in there. He's made some horrendous allegations against Cyril of Jerusalem from his catechetical lectures. Look at the lectures, there's absolutely nothing there. We've got very little to Cyril's literature, hardly any of it. Well, virtually none of it is relevant, but the catechetical letters. But he found another Christian author who misused the baptism and used it for abusing orphan boys. But the way Ammon presented it, it was like, this is what the church endorsed and this is what the church was doing. That's the way he presented it. And this is what Cyril wrote to do. But that is not at all in the text. So that's another one. So it's very clear he has the agenda to malign Christianity, call their Jesus a fairy tale Jesus, say this is the ugly reality, and you've kept it under wraps, but now we're going to practice it again. And the only thing Jesus was doing wrong was making money out of it. That's the essence, really, of what he's aiming for. As far as I can see, that's his stated intention. If that's what he wants to do, I don't think he would ever achieve it. But that is what he believes Satan commissioned him to do, and that he hopes to fulfill somehow. And he's looking for people who will help him with that. He's farming a resurrection army who will become the core, the Ammon core, who will then go through it. But he will need people to prepare the children who don't mind sadism, give these children drugs, keep them sedated. It's horrendous. And on top of that, he calls them idiot children. He even found a way of inventing that through the literature or through misusing the lexica, that the children that are idiots don't know right and wrong. They don't object. So you can take those and do what you like with them. He's said some horrendous things. Now, it's all in the guise of, oh, we're looking at history. And you could say, yeah, it could just be a historical investigation. But when you see that this is what he's aiming to do, and he's sort of putting in place things, and when he says the Korah is on her way, now Korah is the priestess, the one that's been prepared for those 3 years. So you can draw on dots, or you can say they're not connected. I don't know.
Would you say you're a lone voice then currently in terms of, I mean, I know just today is the first time you've done it publicly, but let's say as of today, the only person who's publicly challenging Hillman, or is anyone else taking on this beast of many heads?
When I was evicted, Several other people left as well. They were beginning to smell, this is a cult, we don't like that. So we had quite a long time in another safe house, another safe server. Graham that you see here, he's been, you know, a helper, a comrade. So, and the lady that had been right on the inner side, she left and joined us for a while. She's had her own things to deal with, which she has withdrawn from the Ammon thing to deal with some other things at the moment. So yeah, we've had a passage of people, some who've now just after 2 years have just want to get on with their lives and they've withdrawn. So at the moment, there aren't many at the moment really at the front line. Now, I've been at the front line for a long time. I'm very well known. I've been named as part of the Sisters of Frustration. And yes, he has frustrated my efforts to show the truth in all sorts of ways. So, you know, I've been the one that's stuck my head out most of the time.
All right, well, let's...
Can I make one observation there, Jason? Just a quick one. Is that it seems to me that much of what you're describing of his goal is actually being more or less enacted already in the real world. So we have the trafficking of children, the abuse of children, the satanic rites of children. We currently have the mutilation of children, the drugging of children. All of what you've described as his goal is actually in action at this time in a pretty active way. That's just my comment.
Yeah,
you made that point earlier, Guy. But anyway, thank you. That's underscored. I also made the point he just seems to be part of something larger, maybe even that it's institutional. But I guess that remains to be seen. Hopefully, some people who see this because of following my output will put their noses to the grindstone, because I know a lot of people who like to dig into the dirt and the deep background of characters like this. And one person, Alex, who's here today, said, this guy seems worth tracking. I would agree with that. He seems very, very toxic, very harmful a presence on the world scene. But in the meantime, I say let's wind up for today. It's been an interesting ride, but I think we should take not risk overdosing on this snake venom. Even trying to analyze it, we might get infected by it. If I believed in protection spells and stuff like that, I would say be careful tonight, that you don't get any incubi coming into your dream realm. But I just trust in the Lord to keep me safe when I sleep. Any last thoughts or links? Ali, is your website up? Can we direct?
Right. I've just got it poised here. I'll put it in the chat. Right, it's now there in the chat.
Sure.
Okay. Now this, I put a little bit there. I had hoped to have got a few more pages done while it was still in the edit version. So in the home page there, you'll see quite a few RUC under construction. The ones that aren't under construction, there are pages there. But the thing is, just click there. I haven't got, nowhere near what I want to get up there. There is a lot more information there.
That is a short form.
Oh, all right.
bit.ly/AH response.
Okay, all right then. My husband's given me another link.
Okay, there's a link. They can't click on it, but at least they can see it. I'll stick the link in the Rumble show notes after.
It's a bit.ly link. It's easier to actually reproduce it elsewhere if you can't click on it. That has to be a capital AH, and there's no gap between the /.
Yeah, okay.
Capital AH, and get rid of the gap between /. That should be it.
All right then. So my husband knows what he's doing. So that apparently is another.
Take you to the same place.
It'll take you to the same place, but it's. I wouldn't have known that. So those are those.
Okay. Anything else? I'm going to just stick that up as well.
Yeah. You'll see on my homepage, I have ambitions to do an awful lot more than I've managed to talk about here. I haven't touched on quite a lot of stuff, which I hope I will press on and make those pages available for people that want to dig into the detail. I already completely unpicked his his translation of Mark 14:51 and 52. His translation is, well, you will see how I've shown that he's twisted things somewhat and been not very honest with the actual lexica and how he's presented it to people either. Anyway, explore, and I will carry on trying to add to it. And I hope that I have been as honest as I can, without saying things out of order, and that I've made it clear that I see that there's another side to him.
You definitely made that clear, and I think you've been very careful, and you haven't made any outlandish charges or anything. You've been quite circumspect. So thank you very much for your time and for going to all this trouble, and I hope that it has some effect out there. I'm sure it will, one way or another.
Yes, I'm sure the people that are watching that already are, well, Gandhi there, he will alert Ammon to the fact that this has gone on, and I'm sure that there will be some discussion of this in his Discord.
We'll leave them to their infighting and carry on with our own orientation away from the snakes.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
I'm very, very grateful that you've given me the ability to have this discussion and to actually say things that I've been holding in for over 2 years now. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to provide the opportunity. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. And if people want to follow up to this, then just let me know, and I'll pass it on to Ali. Maybe you can start going on the podcast rounds after this.
I don't know. I do have a YouTube. Well, everybody has a YouTube account. I have nothing in it, and sometimes when I've pasted comments in Ammon's video stream, the comment stream, I've had other people thanking me and saying, "Oh, can't you make some content about this?" So I've got, I don't know, a dozen or so subscribers waiting for something. So I will put this link as my first video.
I can give you the video even if you want to upload it.
Yeah, thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Bye for now.
Thank you very much, everybody else, Guy and Daniel, and Comrades out the way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing and having the courage to step out and speak what you see is true.
Thank you very much. Okay, so goodbye, everybody.
Thanks.